So we were talking about Marvel's 1994 um, comic series with written by Kurt Busiek and illustrated by Alex Ross. There's five issues technically. The interesting thing about it is that issue zero actually came out later. And nowadays, when you see those type of specific events, you'll see issue zeros come out beforehand, sometimes like a month or two beforehand. But it was kind of one of the first events that I recall of having like an issue zero that wasn't necessarily related directly to the story. And that dealt mostly with the Human Torch, the original Human Torch, and kind of his creation. And honestly, I don't think it is super important to our story, so I'm going to kind of leave it out of the discussion of the story here. The main thing with this story was that it really parallels the Silver Age and the Bronze Age in the first issue, and the rest is really the Silver Age for Marvel and the Marvel Universe. And it really kind of does a good job of setting that up and making it accessible to newer people. That's why part of the reason we chose it as our first episode. And then I think the other thing it does a really interesting job of is it really makes it a human story and sets it up to be, hey, this is a new character. This is a character that is not a superhero. It's not any one person that you're used to. It's a brand new character, and it's all through his lens, both figuratively and literally, because the idea is that he's a photographer and a lot of the pictures and stuff are meant to be pictures that he's taken. And so Alex Ross's specific style works really well for that. And I also think it does a really good job of kind of resetting a lot of those Silver Age ideas that have kind of come to be understood in one way now, but really when they were happening in the Silver Age, I think sometimes the mark was missed a bit, and it kind of I think resets some of those things um, that maybe were implied or meant to say this thing, meant to be this, and particularly with the mutant metaphor, I think it does a better job than the actual Silver Age does, and that's I really think what its purpose was kind of meant to be too.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a great summary, and I think leads well into the next thing that we want to talk about, the significance. Because I mean, like you mentioned, him telling it from his lens of a the common folk, I feel like was the kind of main theme that they really tried to hammer home. Like where does the common folk fit in? Like being not powerful enough to kind of protect themselves against, all the chaos that's going on around them. I feel like one of the really the good quotes in the end, the leader of the newspaper. Sorry, I'm forgetting his name. I feel like he's Jameson, and
Yeah, J. Jonah Jameson.
yeah, Jim John Jameson. He's like, if they're so good, what I mean, if they're all wholesome and they can do all these things, what does that make us as a regular person? Like basically kind of showing that he's wanting to put all this negative light on them, because if there's no negatives on them, if they are the holy creatures, they can do all that, then the common man feels very insignificant, not powerful, is at least one of the themes I
Yeah.
saw.
I think one thing that this really does is Marvel has always been better than DC at what is happening with the ground level, whether it be actual regular people or sometimes the ground level heroes that are dealing with day to day lives with the Spider-Man and the Daredevil at times and stuff like that. So I think this really um, establishes that even more. The one thing I don't really like about it, one thing I think is kind of difficult is that if you do not have knowledge of Marvel, particularly the Silver Age Marvel, like you're going to spend a lot of time as you read this bouncing back and forth probably between the story and Wikipedia. Like there's a lot of stuff that it's just assumes that you know, whether that be the background of the Fantastic Four, the background of, I mean, it's issue zero establishes the original Human Torch. We talked about that, but I mean, it kind of expects you to know who Namor is, and expects you to know um, who most of these characters are already. And if you don't, if you're coming from I mean, if you're coming straight from the MCU, if you're coming from an angle that's different than a regular comic book reader, it can be a little hard. I think it's perfect for that kind of not serious fan, but someone that's interested in getting into comics and kind of understanding the Marvel universe. That's where it's great. I mean, that's its significance. Like it establishes the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
In
and then I mean, through my lens, obviously this viewpoint is, and it touches on others, but I mean, this viewpoint is basically the white suburbia viewpoint. I mean, it's 1994. I don't think that they've gone, tried to really get into anything other than that at this point.
mm,
Um, I think it holds up, but I think that that can, you know, the there's a current line called Marvel Voices that kind of looks at characters of indigenous. There's an indigenous voices series, or well, not a series. It's just kind of a one shot. And there's like the LGBTQ one is coming out. I think it just came out for Pride this year,
mm,
and it's you know it's not this. It's not an everyday character, but it's a little bit more of trying to include some of those lenses and include some of those writers that are actually coming from those. I mean, obviously Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross are both older white males at this point, so
mm.
of course that's kind of the lens that they've kind of lent to
Think
the main character here, which is Phil Sheldon, um,
right.
who has been referenced in some other things. Um,
I was gonna
the
say,
other significant,
what
yeah,
Phil
I
himself
mean,
is an older, right, white male, but it's not to say you're saying that the perspective or, the kind of story that the narrator is trying to tell can still be, teach lessons outside of that narrow perspective. You're saying like the whole general, um, angle of what it was trying to teach. You're saying it's like, yeah, it was just more based around that, just like white suburbia, not like maybe as a whole of what all of New York City, like the people in maybe the ghettos and stuff or something might have felt, right? And I could see that.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't get into any of that. I mean, obviously, when you deal with when you're dealing with the superhero stories and these stories, like I mean, the Galactus thing, the idea that all of New York is looking up at Galactus, and then implied, of course, like all of the world is looking up, like what is going on with the sky and all that sort of thing,
Mm.
um, is one thing. But I mean, yeah, I think there is a gap that could be filled. You know, if you feel like this is such a if you feel like this is a seminal work, like there's a gap that can be filled with um, looking at the everyday person that doesn't have time to look up, at Marvel things. And I think they've done that, touched on that in the past and some things. I know they had, obviously a Marvel story with with out of focus on superheroes would be kind of boring, but very it very much drives the point home though as you're reading this that it is a white suburban viewpoint. Like he goes back to his house in the suburbs when when these major events happen, like he comes
Yeah,
out to take the pictures and he goes back home and he's mostly safe
yeah.
at home. And when,
Back to his American dream, the wife, the kid. It's like, right. It ends up
yeah, like
very wholesome like that.
his, and I mean, it does it well. I'll say that like his viewpoints on certain topics change once
Oh yeah,
once they come back to him, right? Like once they really come into the suburbs, then he starts to actually like wake up and do this. And I mean, that's a very much, I mean, I guess you could look critically and say, okay, is that the point? Is that what Kurt Busiek was trying to say with this story? Is he trying to say like or is
Yeah,
he just trying to
because
provide a format for Alex Ross to just put beautiful pictures all over
no,
the
like
place?
like
Like,
you're saying, I think at the beginning of the story, Phil was that fearful citizen of, oh, you know what I mean, the mutant slash heroes, you know what I mean? Like what can we really do about him? But by the end, you know what I mean, he's trying to get Jameson to, see the other side or publish stories that are, putting spinning them in a positive light and, coming out with his own book that's doing that because he doesn't have control at the newspaper, right? To show the angle that they're kind of spinning on the heroes, whatever we want to call them. So think that was
yeah,
a cool side of it.
I think as this podcast goes on, like we'll have some stories that like we can connect to specific like critiques and the specific things that they're trying to critique about the world or trying to critique about literature or different things. Because I mean, that, of course, if I thought comic books were not worthy of literary critique, I probably wouldn't be doing this, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
probably wouldn't spend my time on them if I didn't think that they were a worthy medium. Um, but I have a section down here for my notes for like connections to literary critiques or classical literature, and I mean, there's not here.
right. You
The only
really,
connection is directly to the golden and silver age of comics, and specifically Marvel comics, and it does that very well, and it's great at that. And I mean, it does it so well that they've taken this. They did. I don't think you've listened to it. I don't know that I've talked about it much, but they've done a podcast based on this, um, which with Method Man actually did one of the voices for the podcast. I can't
nice.
remember what character he did, um, but it focuses more on the Galactus event in the podcast. It's specifically just the Galactus event, and really it's not. So really, it's not a direct adaptation. It's Phil Sheldon's in it, but really it's the podcast kind of focuses on this like assistant of his or like intern of his, um,
Oh yeah, I
and it
remember.
does. Yeah, it does a really good. I mean, it's a really good podcast. I like it, but this has now set up like a lot. Like, I mean, this is a work that holds up. Kurt Busiek is doing a new series right now, I think called The Marvels, that is going to be an ongoing series that just started. Um, they've done they've done different uh, versions of they've done updated versions and bigger things. So um, I think it's I think it's significant. I think it's a really significant work, and I think it really helps reestablish the golden and silver ages better than they were in a lot of ways. Because I think we get a look at like the mutant metaphor, and we talked about this before recording, but the mutant metaphor is much better in this than I think it really was in the original Silver Age. Um, I I kind of mentioned that there's a specific scene where there's a young black male that has been injured and possibly killed, like it's ambiguous, um, in the riots following the mutant the mutant riots in New York, and it actually is probably the first time. I'm saying this is 1994, so I'm saying that this is probably the first time that the mutant metaphor, which has always been a civil rights metaphor, or was supposed to be a civil rights metaphor in the Silver Age, is probably the first time that they really directly connected it to a black person being hurt by the metaphor. So I think
Gotcha.
that's that it try. I feel like it tries to update those classic Silver Age stories a little bit,
For sure.
but not like to a. I mean, I think it sets that standard, and then there's other stories, there's other works that have done that a much better way,
Oh yeah.
and gotten more depth to the story part. Again, this is very focused on the visuals, very focused on the main character's viewpoint as opposed to the actual what's happening. So I think they've redone Silver Age X-Men over and over and done it better
Hmm.
than Stan Lee did. Knock on wood
Yeah.
or whatever.
But thinking about
Uh,
that scene of, just it showing that, I think does speak to what they were. trying to say with the culturally. And I don't know, I think it's a good probably, last point on the significance. I think, we've hit pretty good now. And I feel like the something we touched on a little bit so far, because the hell to me for this one was kind of all of the villains, characters in general, heroes and villains that they're throwing at you, right? So I know I highlighted at the beginning of issue 4, he's kind of even talking about the kind of wars that they know that all of the heroes, when they're not battling in New York, right, are going off to fight. And just kind of all the characters on the screen, it's bringing up all the ones that they've talked about before: Captain America, the mutants, everything, but even ones that they're fighting on other planets. And it's just for one comic, like all of the characters and wars on this planet, and the others that are thrown in. And it's revealed that the senator was an alien himself, right? Like posing in there as the governor. So it's like, I don't know. Of course, that's going on throughout the whole thing, and the fact that it starts in 1939, right, and ends almost 20 some years later. It is a lot to take in, and still 4 issues that aren't that long, right? It's just
Yeah.
a lot of things that are
I,
covered.
I think officially it ends like, yeah, 1970, so actually like 30 years, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
but it's yeah, the first issue is like the 39 to like 42 or 43. Well, I guess it goes to the end of the World Wars. So like 45, right? And then all of a sudden, we jump forward. And I think that, that clearly is supposed to kind of establish that golden age and silver age. And then we spend, we really slowly kind of go through the silver age. Uh and that's kind of what I'm said though, that you really almost have to have Wikipedia open in another tab. If you are not
Yeah.
well versed in your silver age, like I think that the reference was to the Korean Scroll War, like the first time that because he's a scroll, and I think that's the first time that the scrolls came around was like this late 60s. Um,
Mm,
but like I mean, I don't consider myself a front to back comic book expert, but obviously my knowledge is better
yeah.
than average, I would say, and
Than
it's
most.
just like yeah, you have to kind of go back through and look some of these things up. And so it's kind of weird because it feels like it's set up to make things accessible to new readers, but at the same time it's also, I think it struggles with that a little bit. um I think for our the hell section of the podcast, it's going to be sometimes it's going to be like a specific moment, sometimes it's going to be like a general idea like that.
Hmm.
For me, I thought, and I feel weird saying this, but I've every time I've read this, I've come back to it. I feel like the mutant girl that he finds out his daughters are hiding in the basement, um, in issue 2 is, and I hope that's not too spoilery, but I feel like that, uh, I feel like she's too too over the top, like too obviously like mutant in a physical way, like a if you know your X-Men, like a Morlock way. Like she's a mutant, like she is not cannot be accepted around people. Like it's a
Yeah.
very striking visual, and in a hyper realistic style of Alex Ross, it seems to me like a somewhat weird choice because we don't get any other character that I can think of that really comes off as strongly like different, and it's a little jarring almost.
Gotcha.
And I think it's supposed to be, but I think it's too jarring. Like it takes you out of the story.
The
I
immersion,
mean,
yes, a little bit.
yeah, like he doesn't go in the basement and just be like, ah, what the heck, like like literally the hell, like I mean, but that's the level of kind of look that this is. Like it's not like Angel from the original X-Men with where he just he's got big wings or something. It's not a it's a
Mm.
visual mutation, that then we don't even know. I mean, we don't obviously ever find out like if if that means that she has some sort of power or if she just looks really funny because obviously that's not I don't think that's been established as like a mutant thing in the X-Men of like oh you can have a mutation with no abilities like I don't know
Right, being a kind of
I'd have to do
useless
more study
mutant.
but yeah like I mean
Like,
they've played with that before like I've read some things where there's been like some really useless powers or some weird powers but like it's still supposed to be some sort of powers. Like she just looks weird almost.
right.
And the other part, honestly, like her character in general, the on the back end of that, and kind of the opposite way, like I was very frustrated at like how quickly it just like was not a thing anymore. Like I
Yeah.
understand that like it was meant to, the issues are a little bit self-contained. That was meant to really stay in issue two, but like he has this significant brush with a young like really young mutant girl, and then she's gone, and then like, man, I'd be worried about her for like the next 20 years, and like
Yeah.
we're there for the next handful of years, and like it doesn't come up again.
Mm.
It's not like, oh, I found, I want some closure there. Like, what happened to her? Did she, because we just get a note, and it's like, oh, I left. I didn't want you guys to get in trouble. I left. Maybe I got hit by a car as soon as I got out of the basement. Like nobody really knows.
Right. Don't worry about it though.
Never gonna. Yeah, um, it really takes that character really. It's a significant part of the story, and I think she needs to be there. It's honestly that's my favorite issue of the event, but it's just yeah, there's just some frustrating parts to it, um, and it's something that I can't like I yeah that's like what I think about when I think about this this issue is like think about either the big I think about the big shots of like Giant Man and Galactus that Alex Ross has drawn beautifully, and then I
Mm.
think about this girl, and then like yeah, and it's it's kind of a disturbing picture. So
Yeah.
um,
Some definite stark contrasts. I mean, are those the as we move into the best and worst section? Are those kind of kind
so
of it for you, or I don't know if you want to.
so obviously the best and worst, uh, kind of our award section. We've not really discussed how this is going to work, so
Right,
we'll just
right.
get
This
into
could
it.
be a little rough.
I picked things for all four that we're gonna hopefully be consistent with going forward, and I think you have too. So I'll start with best character. And I mean, with this one, it's a little obvious to me. I mean, I think Phil Sheldon, he's the main
Yeah.
character.
Right.
He's the best character. Like he's his he's not a superhero, but I think like he's superly human. Like I mean he's a person. Like
Yes.
that they that's where Busiek has done a very good job as a writer of just making this character
Yeah.
be a person
I'll
and
go
be
ahead
a
and
believable.
reveal that that was mine too, because yes, you gotta love the character that has the ability to learn and adapt, right? To see the things around him and not just conform to it and go along with it and, know that, oh, it's wrong and, what I mean? I want to fight for what I actually believe in, you know what I mean? How can you not like that character, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
The other thing
yes,
too, I think he did a really good job of like not let's let's be honest. Comics are very comics tend to be very left leaning. I would say on average, and if you don't get that, you know I'll probably alienate people by saying this,
yeah,
but
it's
if you don't
fine.
get that, I feel like you're not actually paying attention to the comics.
Yeah.
And I think it's always been the case. And the well maybe not in the Reagan era with some of the editors and writers, but that's a whole different thing. Um, but in general, I think comics have been very left leaning, and I think they do a good job of not making Phil Sheldon obviously like one type of person. Like he's not obviously just a straight 1960s liberal. Like he struggles with the decisions of, do I support this cause or this cause, and honestly switches at one point from one side to the other, uh, and maybe a couple times. Really, if you want to look at kind of the overarching thing, like I mean, he wavers, and I think that gives you a lot better view of like the average person as opposed to like the actual typical comic book writers that you see. Like you don't get a representation of a moderate person in comics that's believable as a real character, because I think when you see moderate characters in comics, they tend to come off as just like they don't have any think, like they don't think,
Yeah,
right? Like
right.
modern characters in comics, in my experience, I feel like they just, they're then just there. Like, oh, this is a moderate character. He doesn't feel strongly about anything. Like,
That way you can
no.
push them in
Oh,
any direction, right?
yeah, Phil
Uh,
Sheldon feels strongly about a lot of things. He just not like, he it changes. And I think there is some grounding there with his family and makes it somewhat significant. I think it also, I think it also leads in here to my choice for worst character, which this might be cheating. We haven't really established rules. Phil Sheldon is also the worst character because
ooh.
to me, he does. I mean, one, he throws a brick at Iceman. That's not cool. Um,
Unacceptable.
also, also there's he's neglectful to his family at times.
Definitely is.
Sometimes in a worrying way.
It's like work doesn't have to be, yeah, number one like that, especially when the world's falling apart, right? Like when would your wife and daughter need you the most, right? When everyone thinks they're gonna die, right? And he's like, no, I have to go take pictures. You must understand.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that as a father, and a husband, like that's something for me, like from my lens, like it it's a decision I think a lot of people make. You know, are you gonna be a focus on your home life with your spouse and your children, or are you gonna focus on your work life? And I think he fairly consistently chooses work life up until like the last moment. I think, like, if I
Yeah,
remember,
right,
the
right.
last couple pages, like he
Finally
finally goes
redeems
and sees.
himself, right?
Yeah, and I can't remember. There might be a. I think there's a book, that, and like another book that they did that does Phil Sheldon like in a specific like news story, like just a specific story that's like new, and I can't remember for sure, but I think there was, and I think then like it kind of undoes, if I remember, it kind of undoes that moment, because then he makes like a decision to, because he's got to be the main character of whatever one this one shot is. So then like he of course has to make the decision to go be with
Yes.
yeah, go be with work again. I think so.
Yep, yep. Was an ongoing theme. Yeah, no, can't say that that was my pick. I didn't really have, a great pick. I feel like one of the heroes or villains, probably would have made more sense. I feel like mine might be a cop out if I'm just gonna go with, you know what I mean, the classic do evil Jameson. That's right, always out to get to the mutant, spin it against them when it's like there are legitimately evil ones to pin, like, Galactus, or I know somewhere in there, I couldn't tell, it seemed like alluded to the fact that some of the people that were fighting, I thought it was the first time like Silver Surfer made an appearance with I don't know if there was a kind of no, he is like the Aqua guy, but basically alluding to the fact that maybe they're even colluding sometimes, or you know what I mean. You never know if like one of the evil guys just kind of causing a ruckus, you know what I mean, kind of just because, and you know getting paid off behind the scenes or something. But basically, you know, Jameson's always out to get them, even the good guys, right? Even when there's legitimate bad guys around. So I'm just
Well,
gonna give it to him.
I will say too that when we set up kind of these topics too, I kept this purposely vague so that like because
Yeah.
I mean there's gonna be story arcs that we cover um that the best character can be best written, or it can be the best character that is in the
Right.
story, the character that you like the best. I think Jameson works as a worst character in the fact that it's really hard to write Jameson,
Yeah.
especially in that era, because he does see it so black and white. And there's been ways that they've explained that, um, his hate for Spider-Man, and it's been explained in backstories different times with his wife being killed by mobsters. Um,
Yeah.
because of stories he wrote and things like that, and like that he is going to stick to his guns no matter what because of that event.
Yep.
But it's just really hard to write him in a
Yeah.
way that's not a little bit cartoonish.
Right. He's
I
like
don't think Busiek does
hopelessly
anything like
flawed kind of thing.
yeah, I don't think Busiek does anything like new with him here. Like he's
Mm.
not breaking new ground with J. Jonah Jameson, especially in hindsight of gosh, 27 years later. Like yeah, you people have done Jameson better since then. And I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like people probably did Jameson better before Busiek wrote this too. So, um, for me, the next award is wow moment. I touched on a little bit like the big the big visuals. Honestly, this whole thing. I mean, I've got the Alex Ross poster behind me. I mean, it's like the whole thing. The visually, like the
Yeah.
wow for me, is just the whole thing. That's the reason you pick up marbles is the pictures on the covers. I mean, that is why this really exists. It's basically to show off Alex Ross's artistic ability. He's a very specific style. I know that most people, there's people that would say he's not really a comic book artist, or his art is different from other comic artists because it is so real, hyper realistic. It is very different, and I'm sure that some people don't like it. I do. Um, Obviously, it's very hard for him to be. I imagine it's very hard for him to be an ongoing comic artist. Like, I don't think he would be the. I don't think he's ever really been the everyday guy on a comic. That's not been, or at least not one that I can think of. I know he did Astro City with Kurt Busiek, and I'm not super familiar with that. But yeah, his art just. I mean, that's why. I'll go back. Like, I go back to this occasionally just to look at like his art at times. So um, that would be my wow moment for my best. This kind of what we're calling the best moment. So
For sure.
uh, just the whole thing.
Yep. Yep. I'm trying to think. Yeah, what would be mine? But yeah, of course, I feel like the whole thing. I mean, yeah, we're soon gonna have to give our our overall score, but there were certain scenes, you know what I mean, where I guess they did a good job of making you feel the scale of what's going on, right? With the Galactus, coming in, just I guess yeah, make it more feel like it's a global event. You know what I mean, like it really was, and you know what I mean, some of those things. I mean, even when I know towards the end, it's like there's some good art. I'm looking at here when Namor comes back towards the end with the machines that are kind of real UFO looking, just going down New York. So yeah, I would say the art style for sure throughout is pretty amazing. But I'll pick one of the Galactus appearances, just how they really show, right. I mean, all the superheroes are powerful, but they really make you. It's the one where it's like after the event happened, they all knew it could have been over. In a second, it was the doomsday scenario. So I think they really did a good job at highlighting that.
Yeah, the Galactus. I mean, I think in my mind when I say Galactus, like it's Alex Ross's Galactus, um, because honestly, it's hard to make a planet sized, a devourer of worlds
Yeah.
look better than Alex Ross makes him look. Like there's often times where he comes off fairly cartoony. So, um, I think yeah, that really made some of those Silver Age moments like seem way more realistic and way more significant in a way that you don't get from kind of the classic art styles of the Silver Age comics. Um, Dumbest Decision is the last award, and I don't remember if I actually told you about this one before I added it in here,
Mm.
but my dumbest decision in the comic was the brick throw, and I kind of took that from Phil Sheldon himself. Like I think he would tell you that that was the dumbest decision that he did if he was a real person.
Wait, that was
Um,
Phil. Sorry, with the brick throw.
well, yeah, there's a few different brick throws because we go through some
Yeah.
riots, but the big one was when he picks up a brick and throws it at Iceman, um, because he kind of gets in the
Oh.
mob mentality the first time that the X-Men show up in the series. Yeah, he throws a brick at Iceman because he kind of joins in with the people yelling at him, and he takes it that next step further, which honestly is, I mean, it's well written. I think in the future on some different stories, like our dumbest decision could definitely be a decision made by the writer. um, but I
Mm.
think in this instance, like this character decision is significant, and I say dumbest because it's something that he then later kind of says himself that it's
Yeah.
was a really dumb decision.
I don't think
Uh,
that's the one after where basically the mutant remarks they're not worth it, because I know that was significant. I
yeah,
think it might have
yeah,
been, yeah, just to
yeah,
show him that, yeah, that even so, just showing how small again the regular man is. Like, oh, they're not worth it. I'm not even gonna come after them and retaliate. So that was an important scene. As I'm trying to think, yes, I know dumbest decision we didn't necessarily have before. Yeah, I don't know. I might just pass roll with yours on this one, because I can't think off the dome which one might have been the dumbest. I know we had some character. It was probably civilian though, right? I don't know. I guess
yeah.
the civilians were making some not clear headed decisions. I would say throughout. So I'll give it to one of them overall.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I mean, really, the other human level characters in the story, uh, kind of hard to say that they did anything of worth or value to add positively to anything.
Yeah,
There's a lot of instances where the other people are mostly just acting on mob mentality and instincts.
I was
So,
about to say hive
uh,
mind, right? They're just showing the
yeah,
general fear in hive mind that everyone else in the population is supposed to like represent, maybe besides Phil, right? For the
yeah.
most part.
So our last section is the score. As part of the score, I kind of would like to start out by saying, um, I feel like one thing we kind of learn and take away from this is, again, it's a good representation of the Silver Age, and it really can. I mean, it can replace that if you don't want to go back and read a bunch of Silver Age comics. Like that can be difficult. That can be a lot to slog through,
Yeah,
honestly, because they're not all great. Um, and so I think it really can replace kind of the general Silver Age, or give you an idea of it, but you're gonna have to go back and forth with it. So I think this is, I mean, I think this is recommended for like I said, like a medium level uh, comic book reader that is maybe into some of the new stuff, or into has read certain comics or certain arcs before, but is not super familiar with the background of the Marvel universe. It gives you a good kind of insight to that in a very memorable way.
for sure. And
Um, yeah, I mean, so did you have anything else on what you learned, or what you would recommend? Because
yeah, I mean, I guess
I like your opinion
generally,
of newer, newer level. So
exactly. I guess I'm gonna say overall, worth reading. You know what I mean, right? I don't know if we're gonna be doing any kind of five-star scale, or out of 10 or anything.
I think we want to do uh, out of 10, and
You going down to
and then I
decimal place, like something point
yeah,
something?
out of 10 with halves, and I think we're gonna argue it. Um, I, so the oh, hold on,
Yeah.
you wanna yeah,
Do
all right.
you want me to go
So
ahead with the? I know some of
I
my
I think we can yeah, I think we might be able to cut in that a little differently at some point. But uh, have you've seen Top Gear, right?
for sure.
Yeah. So you know how in Top Gear they do the lap times for the cars,
Yeah.
and then they have like a running tally of like, oh, here's our board. I'm gonna write this down, put it on the board.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I want to do here is I want us to both give a score, argue it to a consensus score, and then put it on a chart.
Okay.
Um, and whether we do it like quite literally like a copy of Top Gear, I think that would work, or we could do it more
Right.
digitally. But yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a digitalized version of that somehow. It's probably gonna be the easiest way. We'll work on that.
yeah, I think it'd be cool to like I could put it like I could like have one and bring it up for the visual,
Oh, nice.
like in the videos, but then we could also like have like a website or a blog or whatever that has like the digital
Right.
version there. So
For sure. To come back to. And now I feel like, not having a lot of comics, I've read a few to, compare against. That's the thing, right? But I think I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a solid. I'm between like I guess an 8.5 to, I don't know, maybe an 8. I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, I guess I'm starting because I feel like that's average. I feel like I wasn't, maybe blown away, like memorable. I don't know how good comics are gonna get, but that's where I'm feeling leading towards like, yeah, 8.5, even down to 8. I don't know. That's where I'm at.
well, I think we're okay with not being like, it doesn't have to be like a we're not critics, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, it can be what you like a little bit. Honestly, this is kind of crazy. I came down at 8.5 as well, and I mean, I think there's some parts where the story lacks a little bit. Um, I think the visuals are great. I think it's hard to compare those visuals to some of the arcs that we're gonna see, because we're gonna
Mm,
see arcs from comics that were definitely set to come out boom, boom, boom. Like, we're part of an ongoing series. So the style is different, and I mean, art style is going to be really different. So honestly, I kind of don't want to break it down into a rank for story and a rank for art or anything like that. But
gotcha.
I think 8.5 overall, like, I mean, there's a reason that they've redone this. There's a reason they come back to this. It's definitely an important work. The thing about it is, I think the thing that where it loses a little bit of points is I'm not sure that it does anything um I don't think it does anything that like redefines comics at that time. I don't think it does
Mm-hmm.
anything that um is has not been done since. Like it's it's not like uh
Yeah,
to
breaking down barriers in the comic world.
yeah, I think it's significant. I think it's a important piece of work. I don't think it's the best. I don't think it's the best story ever. It's a good story. It ties, but what it does is it takes old stories and ties them together um, through a single character. And so it's not creating the wheel. It's changing the spokes, right? So it's taking something that's already been done and just doing it in a new style and a new version and doing a very good job of that. But it's not, you know, it's it does not stand on its own. Like you have to go back and read other things. You have to know other things for it to work. And I think to me that keeps it that keeps it out of the 9 to 10 range just on principle. That if it can't stand on its own, I'm not sure that it really can be a full 9 or 10.
Gotcha. Think it's a great
Of course,
breakdown.
I'll change that probably then in a later episode. I'm sure I'll come up with some story that I like so much that I make it a 10, even though you have to read like 60 issues before you get to that point. So,
Right. Your frames
uh,
of reference may change, but that's all right.
yeah, particularly X-Men comics probably might fall into that one, but
Yeah. Some
we'll
biases
see.
may come out. Yeah, in that
Yeah.
sense, but that's all right. All right, man.
All right.
Well,
Well, I think we're good to wrap up here. I'm not sure if we have an outro recorded anytime, but if we do, this is where it will play.
yes.
See
So
you later.
thanks for listening, and we'll see you.